This video is about the online questionnaire or the assessment when you go to apply for an announcement on USAjobs. There are different types of questions that are asked in the questionnaire, and there's different ways that you have to answer them to be found eligible. Stay tuned to learn more. Before we get started, you could help out by liking this video to help with the YouTube algorithm. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of all the new videos that are uploaded, and share with anyone that could use this information. When you go to apply for a job on USAjobs, most announcements have a built-in online questionnaire that the Human Resources POC has built to rate you to determine whether or not you're eligible for the position. There's different questions within the questionnaire. It's also called the assessment. These questions will have you answer whether or not you meet the area of consideration, whether you meet the specialized experience or the education requirement. Maybe there's a time and grade requirement, or even have you rate your experience from not having any experience all the way to being an expert on certain tasks that they're asking for. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually preview the assessment or the questionnaire so that you can prepare your responses before you even hit apply. If you need help with the entire hiring process from start to finish, check out our book, Federal Hiring Advice, Your Guide to Government Jobs, available on Amazon. The link to purchase is in the description below. And this is also very helpful because every question that you answer within the online questionnaire will then be balanced against your resume after you apply to make sure that your resume supports the answers that you've provided in the questionnaire. So what I've done is I found a job announcement that had a lot of different hiring authorities or hiring paths, just as an example, so that I can walk you through the assessment. But where you would go is you would scroll nearly to the very end of the announcement under, it should be the how to apply section right here. And then as you read more and expand it, it shows you right here, preview the questionnaire using this link. A lot of announcements have this, not all of them, but a lot of them in various agencies. So when you click on the link, it opens up as if you're going to take the questionnaire. You can't actually answer it, but you can see what the questions are. So I'm just going to go through from top to bottom, and we'll go through each one of these and how to answer it. So the very first one has to do with veterans preference. This one, because of the job not being open to all U.S. citizens, it's not really applicable, but they're just asking you anyway. So if you do meet any of these veterans preference items, go ahead and select the one that applies to you. Now, this is where it gets into the hiring paths, or the eligibilities as we call them. And so these are going to be questions that are yes and no on whether or not you meet these particular hiring authorities, hiring paths. And the idea is that you just have to answer yes to one of them. If you answer no to every single one, then you're going to get screened out because you won't meet the area of consideration. The area of consideration has very little to do with where you live. It's whether or not you meet the eligibility for each of these hiring paths. And you only have to meet the hiring path for one to be found eligible for the area of consideration. So as we go through, are you currently employed by the Department of Veterans Affairs? That would be a yes or a no. Then if you go down, do you work at the facility? Yes or no. Are you a former employee of the VA? Yes or no. And then there's, all these extra add-ons here that you can read through. But just scrolling along, are you a veteran who is separated under honorable conditions and have a service-connected disability rating of 30% or more? Yes or no. Were you employed overseas as an appropriated fund employee? Yes or no. Are you the spouse of a military member? Yes or no. Are you the spouse of a deceased service member? Yes or no. Then it keeps going. Are you a current or former federal employee displaced from the agency hiring for this position? Yes or no. Have you completed at least 1 year of continuous service immediately before separating from one or more non-temporary foreign service appointments. And then there's some ors, and that's a yes or no. Are you a current or former federal employee displaced from another agency other than the VA? Yes or no. Are you a current former employee of the Land Management Agency? Yes or no. Are you a former Peace Corps employee? Yes or no. And let's see, are you a current federal employee in the accepted service in an agency covered by an interchange agreement? Yes or no. Do you have a severe physical, psychiatric, or mental disability? Yes or no. Do you have prior career or career conditional service? Yes or no. Are you currently employed as a civilian employee in the competitive service in another agency other than the VA? Yes or no. Are you a veteran whose last discharge was under honorable conditions and you met these other criteria? Yes or no. And then now we're into the preferences. So all the area of consideration does, one, is it identifies whether or not you meet those eligibility criteria, that you meet the area of consideration, because you have to have certain status to apply depending on how the announcement is posted. But also it shows you how the certificates will be issued later. So for every area of consideration, for every eligibility, you can issue a separate certificate, and that's how the hiring manager can review those. So if you meet multiple eligibilities or multiple hiring paths, you would answer yes to those. It would put you on every certificate that you're eligible for. And then this is the preferences. The following items describes your current or recent within the last 5 years political appointee service. That's not going to apply to most people, so you can skip over that. Here's the resume reminder that your resume has to have a certain structure in order to be found eligible. So you have to have individual job experiences. So your employer is broken out with the month and year as a start date to the month and year as an end date. Unless it's to present, you can put to present. And you also need to put whether it's full or part-time. And if it's part-time, you need the number of hours that you worked per week. This is to help you add up to the 2,080 hours needed to meet 1 year of experience. And then if you were in a federal position, then you have to have the series and the grade, and that's going to show your time and grade. So when you're internal, when you're trying to promote in Title V positions, there's usually a time and grade requirement. So you not only have to have a year of experience in the next lower grade, you also have to have a year spent at that next lower grade as well. And so as we keep going, now you're getting into the actual screen out questions. So a screen out is going to determine whether or not you meet the minimum qualifications for the position. So in this question number 1, the screen out is whether or not you have experience performing phlebotomy, blood draws on human patients, yes or no. So if you answer yes, you'll pass this question. If you answer no, you're going to be screened out because this job requires that you have that experience. Here's time and grade that I was talking about. So for this position, it says that you need time and grade. So you either have it or you don't. Now, if you're not a current federal employee, you can answer no here and it should not screen you out. Now, this is going to be the education and experience requirements. So these are always a little bit tricky when they have either education or experience or a combination of both on which one to select. So if you have experience, that's A. If you have education, that's B. If you have a combination of both, that's C. But if you don't have either one, that's D. D is the only disqualifying response out of these options. And it doesn't matter if you only have experience or you only have education. The goal is to answer one correctly so that you can be pushed through for your resume to be reviewed by HR. So the only one that you don't want is D. Now you still want to answer honestly, so if you don't have that experience or you don't have education, answer D, but that's the disqualifying response. Now the next one is going to be what we call rating questions. Now a rating question just has you rate whether you've had experience or training in a task or you're an expert. And what rating questions do is they give you a score, and that's generally how applicants are ranked from best qualified all the way down to minimally qualified. What most people do is they answer that they're an expert on everything, and then HR has to review the resume and they will reduce their score if they don't show that that they represent this in their resume. So if you're going to answer you're an expert, you need to have this give verbal instructions regarding sample collection process to patients listed in your resume somewhere, some form of experience to justify that you're an expert. And that'll be the same for all of these questions. And what will happen is if you answer that you're not an expert, then your score will be lower, and that could affect how you're referred to the hiring manager. So generally, the best qualified candidates are referred first. So if you have a lower score than another candidate, that could cause you to be issued on a separate certificate. So as we go through, these are all rating questions, all of them. So they're going to ask you several. And then at the very end, there's this question that says, I certify to the best of my knowledge and belief that the information that I provided was correct. So basically, this question is asked for you to certify that you lied or you didn't lie. And so yes is the qualifying response. If you answer no, then you will be screened out, because what you're saying is no, that you did not answer to the best of your knowledge, essentially saying that you falsified this information. And this one has a second resume reminder, so it must be very important if they put it in there twice. So just to summarize, this video covered the online questionnaire or the assessment and the different types of questions that are asked. So going from top to bottom, generally you're going to get asked about whether or not you meet the area of consideration. So there's a question for each eligibility that's been selected, each hiring path, and as long as you answer yes to one of them, then you'll be okay. Now, if it's just open to all US citizens, you shouldn't have those questions, and so you'll be fine. Then as you go down farther, you're going to be asked your eligibility screen out questions. So you're going to be asked whether or not you meet the minimum specialized experience or the minimum education requirement or a combination of both. And as long as you answer anything other than that you don't have either, then you're going to be pushed through. You won't be screened out. If you answer that you don't have either education or experience on that particular question, then you will be screened out. Then the next questions are going to be your rating questions, so that you can rate yourself from whether you have no experience on a certain task all the way to being an expert. And when you answer this question, you're going to need to have the support in your resume. So if you say that you're an expert on a certain task, you better have supporting evidence of you completing that task in your resume somewhere. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. If you need to work one-on-one, you can visit the website at www.federalhiringadvice.com and we can schedule a time to meet.